the minutes of the meeting of June 19th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any corrections? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Debbie's going to talk about the trim notice.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you know, this is required by state law that we make a recommended proposed millage rate, so it be published in the trim notice. And PSTA is recommending that we keep the millage rate at its cap of .7500. And with that, we anticipate a $3,881,050 increase in property tax for next fiscal year. So our action item today is to recommend approval of the maximum millage rate of .7500 to be transmitted to the property appraiser.
Do we have any questions?
Just one question.
Go ahead.
That increase, is that what's in the current budget? Or?
That is, it's slightly different by just a tiny bit, so when you see the next final draft, that will have that in there.
Okay.
Well, how much is a tiny bit? Like,
I want to say like $43,000.
Okay.
Tiny bit.
It's $18.60.
61 cents.
61 cents.
Okay.
well, I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any more questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Would that be on action or consent?
Oh,
well.
action.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd ask.
Darn it. I know. Yeah, I don't think you can get away with passing the alarm rate.
Talk about the auditor.
Okay, we have a premium transit vehicle.
So let me introduce Abhishek for this item.
Again. But we know it.
At the last PSTA meeting, we had a lot of discussion and requests by board members for more information about what's the timeline on the Central Avenue BRT and what decisions are going to come back to the PSTA board, and we're putting all of that together. I think we'll have something ready for the board meeting to kind of lay out the schedule. The next major item on the board's agenda will be next month when we purchase buses. We place the order for buses. So this presentation, this month, we created an action item for the board to approve the size of the buses that we're planning on to buy. Because that's been obviously a big question mark. Lots of people have asked questions of us about what size the vehicles will be for the Central Avenue BRT. We pride ourselves on being a data-driven organization that makes decisions based on data, and up until now, there's been a lot of discussion about the size of the vehicles, not too much based on data. So we thought it would be best for the PSTA board to see the data and to rest our decision based on the ridership estimates about what size of bus to buy rather than some other kind of decision. So I hope I didn't take too much of Abhishek's thunder, but he's going to show you the data.
All right, thanks Brad. Good morning everyone. Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management Office, and here to talk about the premium vehicle analysis and really the data behind all the analysis that we're doing and have done to date to arrive at a decision regarding vehicles. I'd like to start off with this regional picture, this regional vision that we're trying to implement bit by bit, starting with the Central Avenue BRT project and the importance of this being a successful project to replicate that success elsewhere in the region. So, as I had mentioned to the board and to this group also, we are approaching towards 60% design. We completed 30% design a few months ago, and we're trying to complete this 60% design by August of this year. So as part of the overall project schedule, to keep within the overall project schedule, we would like to order the buses by August of this year. And so there are two options. We've talked about using 40-foot buses. We've also talked about using 60-foot buses. And fortunately, both the options will include a capacity for up to 4 bikes inside the bus. So, and here are just a few pictures of other systems that do have that kind of facility with bikes inside those buses. So as far as the original plan was concerned, we did look at 60-foot buses originally. Why we looked at that was based on the overall daily ridership forecast that we had predicted back then. And again, this does allow for additional bike storage inside the bus. And pretty much all the BRT systems that are around the country, be it in Seattle or in Los Angeles or Cleveland, they all use these 60-foot articulated buses for BRT services. So it would be similar to the systems that are already out there. And then, of course, given the fact that we do not operate any 60-foot buses in the region, this will present a distinguished image as we roll out the BRT service. So what you see is just a typical layout of a 60-foot bus. The seating capacity ranges between 42 and 49. The lower end of the range is assuming 2 wheelchairs occupying some of the seats. So, and then the higher range of 49 is assuming that there are no wheelchairs and those seats can be used by others. So overall, between 42 to 49 for a 60-foot bus. Now, if we look at a 40-foot bus, as Brad mentioned, there was several conversations in the community, particularly in St. Pete Beach Commission, to respond to their concerns. We did agree to look at 40-foot buses. It was included in the initial negotiations with the St. Pete Beach Commission. But the feature of bikes inside those buses, we retained that ability. So this layout that you see here for a 40-foot bus still shows space for up to 4 bikes inside the bus, with a seating capacity ranging between 23 and 31. Again, the lower end based on wheelchairs inside the buses, and the higher end would be with no wheelchairs in the buses.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you, but 4 bikes inside, does the rack still go out front of the bus too for the two?
No.
Okay, it's 4 period.
4 inside
Got it.
and no racks
I
outside.
understand. Thank you.
So as Brad had mentioned, that we're always aspiring to make data-driven decisions. So as we're trying to determine the size of the bus, and we'd like to order those buses by next month, we did perform a ridership analysis based on peak loads, based on our ridership model. We also looked at our current Central Avenue trolley in terms of how many people will be on the bus at the same time, how long will there be, and then how many standees based on the ridership assessment, and how often does that happen. So we looked at several things. We looked at the Federal Transit Administration's approved ridership model. It's called STOPS, or Simplified Trips on Project software. We also looked at the allocation by time of day and direction and location on the Central Avenue trolley to determine the daily peak loads. And so what we found was that during both the peak periods, AM and PM, loads tend to average between 31 to 36 people on the bus for about 1 to 2 miles. And most of that heavy loads were kind of in the center of the route, so between around Grand Central to just across the Corey Causeway Bridge. That was where we found the maximum loads on the bus. And then during the off-peak times, the loads are obviously a little bit lower. Overall, the average maximum load was about 24 people or less on more than 80% of all the bus trips. So when you compare the 40-foot bus versus a 60-foot bus in terms of number of seats, how many people we can accommodate comfortably who are standing, we arrive at a total capacity of about 46 on a 40-foot bus and 74 on a 60-foot bus. Comparing that with the maximum passenger load that I talked about in the previous slide, we're well within the overall capacity for either of the two buses. An additional point to note is our current project cost of $43.9 million. That includes 40-foot buses. So if we were to move to 60-foot buses, that would add $2 million to PSTA's share of the cost for that project. The overall cost of the project will rise by about approximately $4 million, and we're assuming that almost half of that might be covered by FTA funding. So the PSTA share would be an additional $2 million. So as far as the project is concerned, we are continuing to advance the design. As again, Brad mentioned, we would like to order these vehicles by next month. And then also coordinate with Federal Transit Administration on a grant agreement, which we hope to have that completed by later this year. And then also coordinate with our project stakeholders, be it City of St. Pete, FDOT, or Pinellas County on the project design. And then all throughout this process, continue with the community outreach to hear from our stakeholders and neighborhood groups. So you've seen this project schedule before. We're continuing on that process. So with that, the recommendation really is to look at 40-foot buses to support the Central Avenue BRT project, and maybe continue to monitor that in the future and see if there's a point where we might have to transition to bigger buses. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes.
So I appreciate the fact that we're data-driven. I think that's an important aspect of making these decisions. In using the stops modeling, can you share a little bit about the inputs and the kind of the data that went in to create that model? And are there areas that we have an opportunity to manipulate that data, not in the negative connotation, but put in our own 2 cents as to what we think things might be that might shift that data?
So the stops model that's put out by Federal Transit Administration, it does look at several elements, including population, employment. It also looks at the existing ridership on the system. And so they do use algorithms collecting information from all those different sources. And it also has factors that are used industry-wide that FTA has put together. So it's a predefined tool that we use, but some of the local factors that we do put in are the population, employment, and the existing ridership on our service. So that's kind of what we rely on.
Okay, so these are hard facts that we're inputting into that modeling software to arrive at the ultimate forecast.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's important to note, because there are many folks that might say, well, you put in this number, had you put in that instead, and you had the ability to put one or the other, would lead to a different result. So I appreciate that. You also noted that the 60-foot buses would be an additional $2 million PSTA cost if we went with the larger buses. But the 60-foot buses were in the original proposal. So is it $2 million now because the overall costs have gone up in other areas?
Yes.
And that's absorbed that $2 million?
Well, so the $2 million, so when we updated the costs based on, when we moved to 40-foot buses, the $43.93 million was assuming the 40-foot buses. If we were to go back to using 60-foot buses, we would have to incur some additional costs. So that's what this is intended to show.
And the next item is not really a question, just it's been shared with me at community stakeholder meetings in St. Pete that there is actually a preference for the shorter bus amongst the business community, that it fits more in with the overall environment than the 60-foot articulated bus. I don't know if that's just, this is what we're used to, and so this is what we want, or where that's coming from, but that has been shared on multiple accounts. One last question, and it's not really about the size of the bus, but with the bike rack usage. So there's 4, regardless of the bus size, there's 4 spots for bikes. Do we know if there's, is the number of available bike spaces, do we anticipate that being able to be communicated to users in any way? Right, so if I'm a rider and I'm waiting for the bus and I have my bike, do I have a way of knowing that 4 of the bike racks are already taken, and that one's not going to work for me?
I can certainly find that out and let the group know.
Okay.
What the mechanism is to communicate that to the riders.
I realize it's not necessarily for this conversation, but it occurs to me that the sooner we start thinking about some of these things as part of the overall usage and design, the easier it might be to incorporate later.
I know that they make a system that's reportedly does do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can see what that costs.
Yeah, but you don't know if the person with the bike is getting off the bus at the place you're trying to get on.
You don't know that.
And sometimes the parking spot that says it's available is filled, but I think overall,
Well, I've
in
been
general,
told that a few times.
yeah, if you know that, oh, there's 3 empty spots, great, this one's gonna be for me.
I believe that's been addressed a few years back, that it would be on an app that
Right.
would tell us,
Yeah.
bike riders, if there's a spot on the rack or what's on it, but I don't know.
You have to buy a sensor,
Sensor,
a
yeah.
little sensor to stick on the bike rack
Uh-huh.
that we have not bought yet.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you were using the app to tell when the bus is coming, whether there were
Yeah.
Yeah.
racks open.
Those are what speed things.
I had a question about the bike racks too. If at some point we need more capacity on the bus, can we then put a bike rack on the front and take a couple of spaces for seats then?
So I guess the original
Retrofit it.
design intent was to make the boarding and the lighting process
Right.
quicker.
Yeah, I get that, but
So that's why we decided not to put any bike racks in the front of the bus because the driver, they
I don't know,
can't.
because people like me take forever to put their bike.
I know that.
And we still want you to ride, so.
Well, how many buses are included in the proposed, how many new buses?
So we're looking at up to 9 buses.
Up to 9? Okay.
So that's up to 9, is that aspirational at some point, or is that,
Well,
or we have
9
to wait to see how the budget continues to play out and what we have left to buy, or?
No, 9 is what we had originally forecast.
Okay,
So
so it's 9. Okay.
9 is what we're bringing to the board next month.
Okay,
but
just,
it's-
okay, 9,
But I
Okay.
want to finish my question now.
sorry.
But, so 9 buses, and then if they were all 40-foot, that's the price, but if we go to 60-foot buses, then it's 2 million for all 9, is that correct, or per bus?
It's 2 million for all 9. For all
Additional.
9.
An additional.
2 additional.
I like that.
And they're 15-minute routes? Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, the estimated peak morning hours is 6 to 8, and that has the most, if somebody misses, or if the bus is packed, a 40-foot bus is packed at that time, then there's only a 15-minute wait for the next one to come.
Yes.
Okay.
And one final point, have we brought this, or is there a plan to bring this presentation to other stakeholders, namely the city of St. Petersburg, so that they can weigh in on how they feel about one versus the other? At least the design capacity, those sorts of the modeling, so that they understand and it's communicated as to why we've gone with one. I know Mayor Kreisman has expressed rather strongly that he wanted the original 60, but there might be an opportunity to weigh in on with real data that it's not necessarily worth it.
That's the intent.
Okay.
To get this data, this analysis completed, and then have a decision that's based on numbers that we can then share, that we can show why we decided on this size of vehicle.
But we're looking at bringing this to the board for approval of this before we've had that opportunity to share that and get any further feedback.
Well, I mean, we can, if you would prefer, we can try to present it between now and August when we actually purchase the vehicles.
That would be my preference, just so that everyone has an opportunity and doesn't feel like this was chosen for them, but chosen with them. Especially those folks that are contributing funds to the entire project,
Yeah.
and have strong feelings. For better or worse, seeing the bus is one of those things that people are what they feel they're connected to. The project's much bigger than just the actual bus length, but that's the part that people interact the most with, and so their input is valuable.
So are you saying to hold our recommendation off until that happens?
I would be fine, my personal preference would be to continue with the recommendation from here,
But before?
but bring it to the board after
Okay.
we've had an opportunity just to at least share this with other stakeholders. So bring it in August instead of July.
Okay.
Okay.
Or could it be done before our next board meeting?
Well, I'm having a meeting with the City of St. Petersburg this afternoon, and the chamber, not with the mayor, but staff, and I'll present this to them. And we can certainly make sure they have copies and share it with the mayor and, the whole city council before next Wednesday. We're,
In 2 weeks?
2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks, to make sure that they all.
If
see
we
it.
could feel it can be done before the next board meeting, that's fine. I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that we are not leaving those folks out of that process, as there are their views that.
I'm just a little bit worried about showing, not having the board approve sort of the size of vehicle, or at the same meeting that they actually, the board then purchases the vehicles. I mean, there's, about waiting till August.
Okay.
You got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, it's, like I said, I didn't know you had meetings scheduled with those groups in between the 2 weeks. So if that's the case, barring any sort of,
Major.
an uproar or concern, then I'm fine continuing as
Is there a
planned.
motion?
Yeah, make a motion to recommend staff on the 40-foot buses.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a number of regular riders on the plan committee. What's your opinion on standing on the bus? How often do you feel that's, you ever have to do that?
Yeah. Or I'll give up my seat, if it, well, yeah, I'm a gentleman, but it really depends, it's not generally the entire route.
Right.
Whatever route you're on, there's just peak areas, like he was saying that at Grand Central, that's where you start that pickup going toward Causeway, it starts filling up. And I don't like to stand, but I mean, I do. And, but I don't like to see other people stand that aren't in really good health but if I had my druthers, I'm very impressed with articulated buses, having ridden them, a couple weeks ago out west. But it is what it is.
I will take a contrary point to Commissioner Cox here. I actually like to stand, and even when the bus isn't full, I prefer to stand. Honestly, the only bus I don't like to stand on is the extended parking from TIA into the terminal, because that thing's kind of crazy. But I'm a tall guy, and sitting in chairs, it's just easier for me to stand, and you get a little bit more of the air conditioning that way too.
Well, I'm elderly.
Your head up above.
A little bit. The
I'm
weather's a little bit better up
elderly.
there.
I don't mind standing either. It's not like those seats are all that comfortable. They're luxurious.
True.
All right.
U.S.
Service changes?
I'm just doing my own little survey.
The service changes, and most of you know, we consistently monitor all of our routes all year long, and we make 3 service adjustments, February, June, and October. And that's what keeps us with our status of being one of the most efficient operating, or transit operations, actually in North America, I guess, based on the AVBG group. That goes further than the United States. So we've got some recommendations we're bringing to you, changing 4 overall routes, our connector services up in northern part of the county, and I'll show you the maps along those. Those are established in 2012 where we would have a base route that we would deviate them up to 3/4 of a mile to pick people up and drop them off at the curb. And what we found in that time is that some of these deviations we didn't anticipate can be 20 to 30 minutes. And when you throw that into a route, and we limit it to 2 deviations, but even so, when you have a couple of long deviations, you can't keep it running on a regular schedule. And we've gotten a lot of complaints about that. So we're recommending that we move those to a fixed route. And then with our Central Avenue trolley, at the request of the City of St. Pete, we're going to shorten that, turn it around at the county park instead of bringing it all the way down to the Hurricane and Passage Road. And I'll take you through them. This is the Dunedin Palm Harbor connector. This is the current route, and you can see the base route would be in purple, and then that shaded area is where we would be doing our deviations. That's the deviation area. So we would move that with some slight changes in the routing, and you can see those in the red boxes. We'd shorten it a little, bring it off of Bayshore Boulevard and bring it onto MLK in Dunedin, and then change it a little bit up north off of County Road 1/Omaha. We'd keep it on that, move it on to Alderman. It gets up to the Walmart stop right here, and that would take it off of alternate 19 in Nebraska. We look like we've got better trip generators there. Also, we'll be changing the name because it's really no longer a connector. Its operating name is the 813. That's what you see in the little display in the front of the bus, so that's what we'll move to. This will now become our Route 813. And then the Countryside Oldsmar, same thing, purple is what we have now, and you see the deviation area.
Okay, Bob?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, quick question. Can we go back to the prior slide?
Yes.
Where do we have, the Uber Connect
Well, the direct
locations on that
connects.
route?
I do not know that off the top of my head, I apologize. There are 24 of them. I know there is one here at Patricia and Maine. I'm not
Okay.
sure what the ones North County.
Tampa Road and US 19. Is the other one.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but the new line doesn't go to Tampa Road and US 19?
Patricia and Maine.
Yeah, Patricia and Maine, I know is the one, and I don't remember, I'm sorry, I don't remember the North County.
So if you're in,
I can find out.
if you're in North County though, in that area that was receiving a diverted route, how would you be able to use the Uber Connect, first mile, last mile to connect to this new route? Because I presume that's what riders would want to do that aren't diverting.
Anywhere in North County that you live, you could take it to Patricia and Maine. You could take an Uber to Patricia and Maine and catch this route. Or you could, I would imagine maybe it might be more advantageous to take it to US 19, to any of these stops along US 19, take an Uber there and catch the 19 to your destination.
Okay, so but then we're looking at potentially for someone not going necessarily further south on that route, having to transfer 3 times or twice. They take an Uber to Tampa Road, US 19, they take the bus from US 19 up to the Walmart, and then they take the 813 somewhere on that route that they wanted to go. Is that?
Well,
I am not quite following that. I know.
could, but I don't.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think
I doubt they would
of,
not.
like, so Patricia and Maine is at the southern end of the route. So all along that route, if you wanted to go, if you're in the middle of that route and you wanted to go north, you'd be taking an Uber all the way down to Patricia and Maine to take the bus all the way back up north.
If you wanted to, but if they could not walk to the route, they'd qualify for DART. And then they would use the DART system, either, they'd probably just take DART or something. We could even do a contingency, conditional DART and get them to the route themselves. They wouldn't have to do that. And the people who showed up, we had 5 comments online at our public hearing. And 2 of them supported the change, and the others who were against it were because it was less convenient to take it out the flex than it is now because of DART, but they can still use DART. And we're transitioning them, these people, to our same-day DART. That is the Mobility on Demand program. Once they heard that, they were pretty happy because that took care, they can just go the same day. That's what they liked about the flex. They could do it the same day up to 2 hours in advance.
Well, what are the average numbers on the flex? I mean, how many people are we carrying? Ballpark?
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
I know that they, on these routes, the flex have been fairly full.
For real?
Because one of the things that they were talking about were that they would wait up to the outer limit a few days in advance, and then call quickly, because they do fill up those 2 flexing options on every route.
And
That's
those-
why we're having so much trouble keeping them on time.
And those seat how many people, 15, 20?
Yeah. No, I mean, that doesn't mean the bus filled up.
Yeah.
They only would take reservations for 2 deviations for every
Okay.
trip that the bus made
Okay.
on that route. And those 2 deviation opportunities for the bus to flex off the route
Okay.
would fill up.
Okay, okay, I got it.
And then as for overall, you should be getting every month a ridership by route report. You can see what the ridership.
One of the
is.
problems, it's like positives and negatives. The positive was it did flex in that whole zone.
Mhm.
The negative is that, that makes the variability on the
Yeah,
schedule.
The time consumption.
Problematic. And we didn't install, there's hardly any bus stops along the main route, along these routes, because the bus might not go there. It might be back in the neighborhood and
Mhm.
miss stops. So this will allow us to put bus stops along
Okay.
the route,
Mhm.
which is the number one way people find out where the bus goes,
Yeah.
is they see a bus stop. It's hard for people to even understand where these things go. They see a little bus, and they have no idea where it goes.
Okay.
Is there an opportunity to add a direct connect stop,
We could do that.
Yeah.
like at the Walmart, something on the north end of the line? So I'm just looking at the 3/4 mile slide, the slide prior, going, all of these folks who might want to go north
Yeah.
are either walking 3/4 of a mile to the main route, or taking an Uber down 20 minutes and then coming back up, 30.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that we can definitely do.
Because that hopefully would then increase, with stops along the way as well, increase ridership.
Though probably would not be
We have to come back to the finance committee with a new contract amendment when we do that, but yeah.
I'm not saying it should be Walmart, but somewhere on the northern end of that
Yeah.
line.
Otherwise, we'll get too many people taking it to and from Walmart.
Understood.
That's one of the keys for the Direct Connect program. Back to Oldsmar, Countryside, Tampa. This is the current route and the flexing. We're actually gonna make a route change, moving it from Belcher, and we're gonna move it back to Countryside. It was on Countryside before, we had better ridership, so that will be part of the service change. The rest of it will be the same. Of course, it'll become the 812. And the one I'm not showing is Safety Harbor Connector. We really are not getting any flexing on that. That will be the 814. So there's going to be very little change there. We only had one person come out to talk about that, and he actually supported that change, just wanted to make sure we continue to run it. And then, as I mentioned, the Central Avenue Trolley now goes all the way down to the Hurricane Restaurant in Passagrill. We actually have a layover there, a couple of shelters, and the City of St. Pete Beach has asked us to cease service in Passagrill, so we will be bringing it down to the county park. That will be our last stop and turnaround, and bringing it back.
Well, okay. But the trolley will still operate down to Passing Road, is that correct?
No.
It won't, there's no service from the park down, is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow.
And the City of St. Pete Beach did mention they would try to provide their own transportation
Okay.
from that point south.
Go ahead.
And so, as this usually comes up, if the board approves this, if it recommends move forward before this goes out, we will then be on the buses. We put signs on the buses, we put sandwich boards out at all the major stops, transfer locations, and then our staff will try to ride as many of the runs, every run we can get on, to let everybody know that these changes are happening. We've got 4 routes, one of them runs quite often. We should be able to get most of them.
And we put signs on the bus.
Yes, also.
Yes, sir.
So back to the 812, change the slide, but it'd be interesting to see where the direct connect locations are.
Oh, yeah.
Those changes as well, just to make sure that we're connecting
Mhm.
folks on that route. And I would be in favor of also signage at the county park, indicating that St. Pete Beach, the City of St. Pete Beach has requested a stoppage of service from this location. People will be upset at PSTA, and I don't mean to necessarily put the St. Pete Beach Commission on the spot, but it is their call. So-
Our plans for the outreach for the Central Avenue trolley are to have flyers that specify why this is being made.
Permanent signage might also not be bad. if
And that,
it's,
that we can do as well.
I'll pay for
This
it in
one
shelter.
is downtown Oldsmar.
In your face.
We have direct connect stop.
Yeah, we have a direct path stop right there at Pine and Tampa right in the middle.
Pine should be right around here, I believe, in this area. Or is it further, maybe, I'm sorry, it's further back.
Tampa and US
Yeah.
19 is all around.
Yeah,
Forest Lake in that area.
yeah.
Is that Route 78 that serves Countryside that'll be, they're taking a flex time off of that one?
No, 78 is a standard route between Countryside and Park Street Terminal and Clearwater. That one's not being affected.
Oh.
Actually, it will, from what our riders tell us and what some of the people who showed up to the hearing said, doing this change to the connectors will help it link better with the 78 and the other routes that go through Countryside.
Okay.
That was the big complaint. It's not on schedule. They can't use it reliably to go to work.
Okay.
All right.
Is this something we have to vote on?
Yes, please.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
So, I'll,
Even a conflicted emotion.
It's an emotion.
I'll move approval, conditionally. One, I'd like to see these slides. First off, I think it should go to the board because I Route
Yeah, well, that was-
changes,
yeah.
need to make sure they go to everyone. But I'd like to also make sure we add the direct connect stops, so that we can see where people will be accessing these lines. So with that, I would move approval.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments you'd like to make? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
How much would a sign cost at the park?
Hmm?
How much would a sign cost at the park?
Neon?
I'm sure we can get a
Computer
collection at the board
doesn't
meeting just to pay for our own sign.
And graffiti all over the place.
Okay, the only thing we have is,
Commission smart work.
future meeting subjects.
Well, next month we'll be coming to you with a, hopefully, a omnibus bus order, that encompasses multiple types of buses, replacement buses, the BRT buses, and trolleys. That'll probably be the main item on the agenda for August.
I'd like to bring up something regarding the Intermodal Center in Clearwater.
Yes.
I did get to see the conceptual plans that came back, and I know I was a little disappointed that it didn't have anything that Clearwater had discussed in that, because we feel this was gonna be a kind of a partnership. We wanted to see a mixed use there, or at least have an intermodal center there instead of just a bus terminal. So I discussed it with our city manager, and I realize that PSTA's responsibility is not to design things we want in the city, but Clearwater would be, would like to put some money toward that to help with the conceptual design. Because I think this is gonna be a partnership, because we'd like you to have that bigger center on Court in Myrtle. And, because I know you're overgrown on the little bus terminal we have on Garden. At some point, we want to do a trade. And so it's going to be a partnership anyway, but we would like to put some money into that if that would help design that into something that Clearwater could use in our downtown.
Outstanding, outstanding. Abhishek, if you would like to come up here and kind of give a little, but I'm glad that the rendering that we developed for the grant application, for the build grant application, had its desired effect of getting some input from folks. But rest assured, there has been no design, no design at all. We just contracted to have that rendering done to give people a concept of the location. So the input that we got from the city is timely and will happen.
And more to that, we have set up meetings with the city staff as well to make sure that in the future phase, when we do design, we incorporate all the city's requirements and local ordinances and make sure it's in compliance with all the future plans that the city has for downtown as well. So this was just an operational review of what our needs are as far as our operating our buses and some of the challenges we're facing at the Park Street facility. But the intent was always to work with the city staff as we start the design process to include local ordinances and other requirements and as such.
Excellent, thank you.
And the city did produce what you told me was like a nice list of.
Yes, we did get comments.
Who are you working with there? Is it Rick Hartman, or is it planning?
I
Somebody?
think it's Jim Helios.
Oh, Jim, okay. All right,
That's
very
who
good.
we're coordinating.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
any other issues to talk about? We are done.
I want to meet my partner.
Okay, so I didn't know, and when you gave it to me last time, I printed it out to all the other council.
So you want to meet on it?
Started getting a lot.
That's not far, it's a, what, me?